I have now been traveling for 3 years and 4 months. God willing, I will travel until I die. That's my desire. And I hope this encourages at least one other senior citizen to start traveling. My name is Jerry Miller. I am 70 years old. I celebrated I'm trying to think, where did I celebrate my birthday? I celebrated my last birthday on the Carretera Austral here in Chile. I started my traveling from Texas, but I have lived in the states of California, Arizona, Florida, Minnesota, and I was born and raised in the state of Michigan. My father inspired kind of a love for travel in his wishes to take vacations every summer that I was growing up. And as a result of that, I've seen all 50 of the United States. I've seen all of the Canadian provinces except the maritime provinces, and that only left the rest of America for me to discover. So when I retired, my favorite television shows were Travel Channel and Food TV, and I could either sit in a comfortable chair and watch it, or I could get off my butt and do it. I opted for doing it, and I haven't looked back once.
Okay.
It took me about 2 years to prepare everything that I needed to do to be comfortable that I could start traveling and not look back. Immunizations that I needed took over 6 months to get the complete set. And it was a matter of waiting for my son to start university. And the same day that he started the university is the day that I started traveling. I started my trip from Austin, Texas, and I took a flight from there to Cancun, Mexico. And this was not the touristic part of Cancun, but the actual city where the people live. I spent 7 months traveling in Mexico. I traveled primarily in the Yucatan, but I did travel as far north as Oaxaca and as far south as Chiapas State. I traveled in Mexico for 7 months. From there, I went to the country of Belize. I spent 4 weeks there, and then I went to Guatemala. I spent 9 weeks in Flores, traveling to the various archaeological sites located in the area called the Petén. It was just a phenomenal experience. The difficulty lay in arranging transportation. Mm-hmm. That is a common denominator in most of my traveling. You become dependent on the bus systems or private tours to get to many of the locations, and your schedule, if it's too tight, you'll never be happy. So you just have to learn to go, as they say, go with the flow. I've been to a lot of places where I don't know what the departure bus schedule is until I get to the city. And that's part of the interesting part of traveling. After Guatemala, I returned to Belize and then back to Mexico, where I traveled the far southern routes of Mexico over to Chiapas State. From there, I went to Guatemala. I spent 7 months in Guatemala. I have been to Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. I took a sailboat from Panama to the San Blas Islands and then to Cartagena in Colombia. I spent 6 months in Colombia. I then went to Ecuador, where I crossed the equator. I went to Peru and then spent 7 months in Chile. When I was traveling south in Chile, At Santiago, I was told not to go further south at that time because I was going to run into the southern hemisphere winter. And they said that is not a desirable time to travel in Patagonia. So I took a detour and went to Easter Island, and I spent 10 days on Easter Island, which was actually a culmination of a childhood dream. I had read Thor Heyerdahl's book Kon-Tiki when I was about 10 years old. The books at that time, especially travel books, had photographs in them. And I had pictures of the moais and the ahus on which the moais are located imprinted on my brain for the last 60 years.
Okay.
It was a very emotional experience for me to see my first moai on Easter Island. From there, I went to Tahiti, and I learned that my concept of Tahiti was totally wrong, and that there are actually 120 islands that make up Tahiti, and it's divided into 5 archipelagos. In the 6 weeks I was on Tahiti, I went to all 5 of the archipelagos. From Tahiti, I then went to New Zealand, where I traveled from the north to the south, including Stewart Island. I spent 10 weeks in New Zealand, and from there I flew back to Santiago, and I was told then it was a good time to start my travels south. So I traveled south until Puerto Barras, and from there I began my journey on the Carretera Austral. I went the entire Carretera, and including the 7 kilometers south of Via O'Higgins. I wanted to cross Lake O'Higgins, but due to weather restrictions, the ferry was not allowed to cross the lake. When it was finally allowed to cross 7 days later, it was still not going to the glacier O'Higgins, which was one of the reasons I had wanted to cross the lake in the first place. So I changed my mind. I went back to Cochrane. From there, I went back to Coyhaique, and at Coyhaique, I spent Christmas and New Year's. And then I flew down to Punta Arenas and started my traveling in the far south. That traveling included a cruise on the Stella Australis to Cape Horn, which was another, a very moving experience to see the memorial and the lighthouse and that made up Cape Horn. I have now come to Ushuaia, and I have just confirmed my cruise ship that will take me to the Antarctica. It has been a great experience. I do not understand why I see so few seniors making the same effort to travel as I am. I have heard the excuse that my children need me. Well, like I told my son, who is 21 years old now, the airplanes fly in 2 directions. You don't have to fly back to see them. They have probably never been to locations like this. They can come and see you and enjoy it with you. Another excuse that was quite popular with my generation is my grandchildren need me. And the majority of the time when people say that, they are providing daycare for their grandchildren. That's not an excuse not to live their own life.